So, about 500 years ago, one guy stood up to an entire empire. And he didn't have an army. Nope, he had a book. We're going to get into the story of how Martin Luther didn't just kickstart a religious revolution, he completely transformed a language. Okay, picture this. It's April 18th, 1521. You've got this lone German monk, Martin Luther, standing in front of the most powerful people in Europe. I mean, the Holy Roman Emperor himself is right there. And they're telling him, take back everything you wrote. And what does he do? He says no, absolutely not. The words you're seeing on screen, that's him, basically telling an entire empire, I won't back down. So what would make a man risk literally everything, his life, to challenge an empire like that? It's a huge question, right? And yeah, faith is a big part of it for sure. But the whole story, oh, it's even more interesting. It's about a revolution, not just in what people believed, but in the very words they used to speak. All right, so how on earth does a theology professor from a small German town end up in a face-to-face showdown with the most powerful ruler in Europe? Let's back up a bit and trace the steps that took him from a quiet church door all the way to an imperial trial. So it all really kicks off in 1517. Luther goes public with his criticism of the church selling indulgences, which were basically like get-out-of-purgatory free cards. And man, things escalated fast. By January of 1521, boom, the Pope excommunicates him. A few months later, in April, he gets summoned to that big trial in Worms, and then by May, because he wouldn't take anything back, he's officially declared an outlaw. It got so bad, his friends had to fake his kidnapping just to hide him and keep him safe in a place called Wittenberg Castle. And I want to be really clear about the kind of danger he was in. The official decree, the Edict of Worms, called him a demon in the appearance of a man. Just think about that. It labeled him a heretic, and it gave anyone permission to capture him with the promise of a big cash reward. His life wasn't just in danger, it was officially worthless. Okay, so you'd think being a wanted man, hiding for your life, would maybe slow you down a little? Well, not Luther. Nope. It's right here, in exile, that he starts his most powerful act of defiance yet. Something that would become a weapon way more powerful than any sword. So while he's in hiding, disguised as this knight they called Junker Jorg, that's Knight George, Luther gets to work on something huge. He translates the entire New Testament. Not from Latin, but from the original Greek straight into German. And get this, he does it in just 11 weeks. 11? That's just insane, a totally staggering achievement. Now, this wasn't just another translation. Sure, there were German Bibles before, but they were terrible. They were clunky, word-for-word copies of the Latin version, the Vulgate. Honestly, unless you were a highly educated priest, they made no sense. What Luther did was a complete game changer. He tossed out the old way, went back to the original Greek texts, and translated sense for sense. His whole goal was revolutionary. He wanted it to be so clear that any normal person could understand it. And to make it that clear, Luther had this guiding principle that was, super simple, but also incredibly profound. It was all about getting the words just right. He actually said it himself. He wrote that you have to listen to the mother in the home, the children on the streets, the common man on the market. He wasn't interested in the stuffy academic language of the church. He wanted the Bible to sound like real people talking. The goal was for people to hear these stories and feel like God was speaking their language, German. And here's why this was so absolutely crucial. Think about this. At the time, some estimates say up to 80% of the German population couldn't read. So for most people, the Bible wasn't something you'd read silently to yourself. It was something you would hear read aloud in a group. It had to make sense to the ear, not just the eye. So that focus on natural spoken language, it was everything. And then you have this perfect storm. You've got Luther's focus on simple spoken language hitting at the exact same time as this massive technological revolution, Gutenberg's printing press. All of a sudden, his easy-to-understand Bible could be printed and distributed everywhere, and affordably too. Ideas could now just explode. They spread like wildfire, totally outside of the church's control. It was basically the 16th century version of the internet. But the crazy thing is, the impact of this book went way beyond just religion. It had this massive, maybe even accidental, side effect. It literally helped forge the modern German language that people speak today. See, before Luther, there wasn't really one German language. It was more like a messy patchwork of different dialects that varied from town to town. So Luther had to pick one.
He went with the dialect from East Middle Germany, and because his Bible became a runaway bestseller, that dialect, well, it became the standard. It became the foundation for what we now call High German. It gave all these different scattered groups a common tongue and even gave them a bunch of new sayings and proverbs.
So, all of this leads us to a really important question, one that historians still argue about. Was Luther's whole project just about being popular, making the Bible available for everyone? Or was it actually populist, a calculated strategic move to rally the common people to his side against the establishment?
And to really get a handle on that debate, let's just quickly define populism in the way political scientists often do. It's basically a strategy where you criticize the elite, the establishment, and at the same time you celebrate the common people. And when you start looking at what Luther did through that lens, yeah, things get really interesting.
So let's lay out the two big interpretations here. On one side, you've got the popular view. This argument says his translation was a pure act of faith. He wanted to empower regular folks by giving them a direct connection to God with no middleman. But then there's the populist view. This one sees a clever strategist at work. It suggests he intentionally used the language of the common man as a tool, a way to rally them against the corrupted elite in Rome, creating what was basically a revolutionary people's movement.
In the end, it kind of doesn't matter what his main motive was, because the result is just undeniable. Luther's translation wasn't just a book. It was a political weapon, a cultural landmark, and the linguistic glue that helped shape an entire nation.
So it leaves us with this final thought, right? Was Martin Luther a devout reformer, a brilliant translator, or a master political strategist? Maybe the real answer is he was all of the above. And it really makes you think, how many times in history has a world-changing revolution started not with an army, but with just the right words?